Sony Entertainment have to be exceptionally happy with the performance of Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. It's a big time hit worldwide. People are loving this version of Miles Morales, this exploration of the multiverse. We're seeing 150 billion different versions of Spider-Man. I got to see the movie myself with my 8-year-old son when I was recently on vacation, and he absolutely loved it. He adored the movie, really enjoyed it. Me personally, I enjoyed it as well. I came away especially impressed by the visual effects of the movie. I haven't seen many of these children's films taking that 3D animated style and doing much interesting with it. Obviously, in the first one, Into the Spider-Verse, they used a similar style, but in Across the Spider-Verse particular, it felt like they smoothed out some edges there, and it was one of the slickest looking 3D animated films I've ever seen in my life. Absolutely impressive stuff. The reason people are so sick and tired of Pixar is because everything's bland and boring. It's the same thing over and over. Across the Spider-Verse does not have that issue, and fans are absolutely loving the film. And the best part was, you didn't have to wait much longer for the sequel, for the trilogy to be over. We're expecting the movie in March of 2024. That ain't too long to wait. You get the sequel right out the gate. Well, not so fast. Actually, that's the bad news that I do have to talk about today. When it comes to the Miles Morales Spider-Man series from Sony, they're probably not going to make that date. This is from an article on ScreenRant.com. Spider-Man Beyond the Spider-Verse will not make its March 29, 2024 release date, claims new insiders report. Across the Spider-Verse, the sequel to Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, recently premiered to great reviews and strong box office performance. This only increased the anticipation for Beyond the Spider-Verse, the final Spider-Verse movie. In an extended report on the making of Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, Vulture brings an interview with an experienced artist who had worked on projects for major animation studios and streamers, who anonymously claims there's no way Beyond the Spider-Verse makes its March 24 release date. And that definitely sucks for fans of Miles Morales and these Spider-Verse movies. I think everyone was looking forward to getting in there and getting that final chapter, because Across the Spider-Verse absolutely ends on an enormous cliffhanger. Miles Morales is in a multiverse. He doesn't really exactly know that he's there. And then when he finally realizes what's different about that multiverse than the one that he's actually from, and what kind of danger he has put himself in while he's being hunted down by the other version of Spider-Man, the movie basically ends. And that's the cliffhanger that gets you ready for the sequel. And I think everyone was champing at the bit. They were frothing at the mouth, waiting for the final chapter of this movie. And I think Sony have done a really good job with this. Now, they haven't done a very good job with most of their Spider-Man related stuff ever since Peter Parker showed up in the actual MCU. The first Venom movie is actually pretty decent, although I wouldn't call it a Venom movie, just as like a horror-based superhero movie. It's kind of good. The sequel absolutely sucked. Morbius, the less we say about that, the better. We just got the trailer for Kraven, played by Aaron Taylor Johnson, which should be kind of interesting. And he's even hinting that his version of Kraven is actually going to meet up with Tom Holland's version of Spider-Man somewhere, likely at Marvel Studios, because I don't think they're going to incorporate that character into the MCU itself, especially since Aaron Taylor Johnson already played Quicksilver, I believe, in the Avengers Age of Ultron. So they've done a lot of things. Sony has really tried to expand out all this Spider-Man stuff that they own, even though they've kind of given away Peter Parker, at least the live action version, over to the MCU, and they're kind of letting them handle the, I don't know, I guess the creative decisions, the forward trajectory of that character, while they're building out this kind of parallel Spider-Man centric stuff over at Sony. Basically, all that stuff has kind of failed. I mean, the Venom movie made a lot of money, but the Venom sequel didn't make as nearly as much money, and it wasn't nearly as good. But this Miles Morales Spider-Man stuff has absolutely been gold for them. Every time they put out one of these movies, people are excited for it. They like this version of Spider-Man, and it seems like kids are really enjoying exploring the Spider-Verse and meeting Gwenpool and about 1,500 other versions of Spider-Man. In the first one, I kind of like Spider-Pig, but we didn't get Peter Parker so much in that sequel, which was a little bit disappointing. But there was a lot of cool stuff, a lot of Easter eggs and cameos from Marvel Comics nerds like myself to kind of keep the eye going up there on the screen to make sure that you didn't miss anything. And I thought that was a whole lot of fun. And it turns out a lot of people end up liking that movie. So far, Sony's animated comic book sequel has grossed $290.4 million in North America and $215.9 million internationally, which brings its worldwide tally to a mighty $506 million. It currently stands as the third highest grossing domestic release of the year, behind Universal's The Super Mario Bros. Movie and Disney's Guardians of the Galaxy Galaxy Volume 3, and it's the 4th biggest global release following Mario, Guardians, and Fast 10. That is some pretty good company to be keeping. Now, we did get that first Super Mario Brothers movie back in the day in the 80s when I was a kid, and that was really bad, but I think a lot of kids were jonesing for that Super Mario Brothers movie from Illumination. Absolutely blew up. The 3rd chapter, the final installment of James Gunn's Guardians of the Galaxy, really fun movie. Got to see that when I was on vacation as well. I would definitely highly encourage people to go check that one out if you haven't got to see that. And obviously, you know, Fast 10, it doesn't do nearly as well domestically as you would imagine a franchise that's actually passed $1 billion globally a couple of times. It actually relies much more on the international box office, specifically Asia, to blow up. But that's keeping some good company in Sony. Nobody could be happier than them that they're making so much money and they're doing the right thing. If you can't get those badass VFX, you can't get those really good visuals correct by the time you're supposed to release the movie, just delay it and get it right, because those visuals, that flavor that you see on the screen, absolutely is an enormous reason why the Spider-Man movies have done so well for Sony so far. Because that animated style is just cool. It looks so much better than what everyone else is doing, you know, basically at movie theaters these days with that 3D animated technology when it comes to kids movies. I like the Illumination stuff too, and it certainly looks better than what Pixar's been putting out lately, or even Disney proper when they decided to do a kids movie in 3D animation. But when you see these Sony Spider-Verse movies, they just look so good. It's just amazing color palette. I wish they used less bisexual lighting in the movie, but you know, hey, I guess that's a color palette issue. It's not all bad news. The good news for Sony is it shouldn't really affect anything else. While the Spider-Verse franchise has ties to other Marvel movies, mostly through multiverse references and Easter eggs, the soon-to-be animated Spider-Man trilogy has been mostly self-contained so far. Across the Spider-Verse sets up possible Spider-Verse spin-offs, yet it only directly teases its immediate sequel, Beyond the Spider-Verse. Therefore, a Beyond the Spider-Verse delay would likely not hurt other Marvel and or Sony movies, at least not narrative. So as long as they get the movie out, I'd say within a year of the original planned release date, I still think Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse will be in the minds of kids and parents as something they want to see the sequel to and see that final installment, because Across the Spider-Verse isn't a full movie. Like when it ends, there's not like some really big climactic moment that makes sense for the ending. It's basically just a movie split in half. So I think a lot of people are going to be really excited about this. And there is no doubt in this world, we are going to be seeing spin-off movies from these Spider-Verse films. We're definitely going to see a Ghost Spider, Spider-Woman, Spider-Gwen, whatever you want to call the damn character, that's voiced by Haley Steinfeld. I imagine we'll see a Spider-Man 2099. They got another really big voice actor for that one. There's just a host of other characters that you could do that with. You could certainly have spin-off like self-contained cartoon series and stuff like that. There's so many places that you could go with this franchise because it opens literally, it opens a billion doors of possibilities of places that you can go with it and other versions of Spider-Man to actually go and visit and learn where they're from and what's different about them and their world from our world and the Marvel 616 that a lot of people are used to. So an enormous success. People are going to be disappointed. We are not likely to see this movie come out when they intended it to in March of 2024. I imagine it probably comes out more like around Christmas time, which probably only would make it more money in the long run when kids are on vacation and families are getting together and they want to experience a movie together around the holidays. That would be really smart planning by Sony. And if it was successful, I wouldn't be surprised if Sony just earmarked a Spider-Verse movie around the holidays until it fails. You know what I mean? Star Wars certainly was trying to do that for several years. It didn't really work out for them, but people like the Spider-Verse and they absolutely hate what they're doing with Star Wars. So very interesting stuff right here. We know that Lord and Miller won't be back for anything regarding the Spider-Verse after this next sequel, but there are lots of places to go, and they just got such a really cool, vibrant, animated style that a lot of family is going to be excited to go and revisit and have a lot of fun with. And like I said, I had a ton of fun with my 8-year-old. He loved the movie, and he's definitely going to be asking his dad to take him to the sequel. We are at the end of the video, and well, if this is your first time visiting the channel, or maybe you don't come around that often, I've made a ton of content, mostly around comic books, but certainly a lot of pop culture stuff. YouTube has looked at what you like to watch and what I create and decided this is the best video in the history of my channel that I ever created directly for you. Definitely check this one out right now.